let's talk about this drama, because we had a crazy announcement earlier in the week from Invader, who's also known as on Qidian as Crazy Translator. It's spelled Kurazitolanzuraytor. It's kind of funny, Crazy Translator. But okay, guys, so a lot of people see tweets from the translators or announcements from them on Reddit or Discord or wonder what everything's about, right? Well, I'm here to piece together the information to give you more of an idea what seems to be going on. It's if anyone's reading Sovereign of the Three Realms, this is like a total real life version of the longevity pill arc in terms of like copyright and people taking credit and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And of course, money is involved, so it's always going to be vitriolic. So the first thing that you guys need to know is that when somebody decides to license a book to translate, all of their translations are their content. They have a right to those translations. So let's say I decide that I want to translate a book called Immortal Puppy Syndrome, right? And I go to the creator and I get the license to translate that book. If I translate them chapter by chapter, I have the rights to those chapters. So that's the first thing you need to know. There's a lot more legal tape, but plain and simple, if you see a translation of content, the person who translated it has rights to it. Now, the next thing that you need to know is that there used to be stories that both sites had translations of. So there was one person translating on WuxiaWorld, there was one person translating on Qidian, but then about last year, maybe 15 months ago, there was this huge deal in the works that everyone was vaguely talking about between WuxiaWorld and Qidian for Qidian to host partnered translated content on their website with WuxiaWorld. And this, again, like that's spark notes of what was going on, but there was just this whole thing where they were going to work together, right? So that's the other thing you need to know. And then lastly, there have been translators in the past who have translated for both sites. That's the final thing that you need to know before I dive into this stuff. So those are the three main things. Is if I translate it, I have the rights to it. There used to be stories on both of the sites, and there are translators who've worked for both of the sites. So let's dig into where the drama really kicks in. So about 75% through the time where everyone's talking about this deal that's going to go into place with WuxiaWorld and Qidian to partner on about 7 or 8 novels, it seemed like, Qidian placed all those novels within the deal on their own site. So they took all the novels, like let's say I was translating 3, and then Qidian had like 4. They decided to take the 3 that I was doing, but I wasn't, and this is hypothetical, put them on their site, and then they filed a DMCA against me, saying that they own the content and I was putting them up illegally. So I'll jump down, I'll go over this again, but a DMCA is a Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which we'll get into a little bit later. But basically, it's saying that they had the rights to the content that the translators were putting up on WuxiaWorld. And they claimed that WuxiaWorld broke the contract, which entitled them to all the rights of those translations. This was clearly not the case because it was a fairly public affair because a lot of people knew about it, right? But then, throughout the weeks leading after that, they started directly copying most of the updates and the posts from WuxiaWorld directly to the updates on Qidian. To the point that certain translators would write in entire fake arcs, entire fake paragraphs. Like you could have Jining from Desolate Era, and randomly he would be going to a brothel for a paragraph as a joke because the WuxiaWorld translators were just using it as a means to have a paper trail that Qidian was stealing them. There were also such times where I Shall Seal the Heavens had between every paragraph a sentence that said, if you're reading this on anywhere other than WuxiaWorld, it's stolen works and it's copyrighted material. So that also got directly copied over to Qidian. So people were reading this on Qidian with freaking fake novel things, sentences input saying that they stole it and everything. It was a whole thing. So this went back and forth for a while, and then it seemed to die down a bit, at least to the public eye. I don't read too much on Qidian, so I don't know if it was like continuously through this time. Anyway, So that is until they decide, Qidian, of course, decides that its translators are not allowed to have Patreons. Oh boy. All right. So this would not be too big of an issue, but the coup de grace is if you translate for Qidian, you do not own the rights to your translation because in the contract they're paying you to translate for them, so they have the rights. So the trade-off is you get paid per chapter, or you get paid however they discuss it, but you don't own the rights. So naturally, creating a Patreon and having fans build up to help your income as you translate, because it is a big time commitment, really helps. But when you take away the Patreons of all these people and take away the extra income that they were gathering, they kind of are left with two choices. They can keep translating what they started, but only make the money that Qidian's paying them, or they can drop it altogether because you can't take the translation elsewhere because they have the rights to it, and you lose most of your fans and all of your income. So you're no longer getting paid by Qidian, and you're no longer being paid by your Patreon. So it's like a rock and a hard place for these people. It's like absolutely insane. So this is why you see some of your favorite novels on Qidian just dropping. They get to chapter 500 something, they get to chapter 600, 300, whatever it is, and either the quality completely changes because it's a brand new translator, or it just stops. And now you're left with a story you're addicted to. You have a bad taste in your mouth for that translator, and you don't know why. And you're never going to see the end of that story unless they pay somebody else to pick up the translation. Which this really sucks for the translators for a few reasons, because one, they're dedicating so much time to do this stuff. They're building up a fan base on this, which it's already very difficult to build a fan base. And then if they choose to step away, they lose all of that. And obviously, they're not going to be helped with being told, like, oh, the translator dropped it. It's no announcement. So unless you're following the translator on Twitter or following them on Reddit or something, you're probably not going to know. As an average user, you're probably just going to be like, oh, well, screw them. They just dropped my favorite book. So that's not really fun. So it's basically the translators forced out of their own fan base that they've grown. And what's sad is that the people that get screwed over just move and propagate to the other novels on that site. And, like that site ends up winning. And I hate to be biased, but like when things are so blatantly like really messed up, like I try not to choose sides and I'm still going to cover stories from both websites, but it's still very like difficult to be like, I don't know who's in the wrong here. It's pretty blatant. So now, fast forward to 1 to 2 months ago. It's, of course, May 8th today, 2018. And Qidian ordered a DMCA, again, that's a Digital Millennium Copyright Act, against WuxiaWorld translators and their Patreons. You may have noticed this if you do advanced chapters on any... on like Hyorimaru or Deathblade or literally anyone, you'll probably have gotten the notice to Patreon subscribers that, hey, save these links. We're going to be updating these Google Docs or whatever they're doing to make sure that their Patreon subscribers were still getting the content, because unfortunately, just like YouTube, when people file a copyright claim, you never know what's going to happen. Let me go ahead and explain what a Digital Millennium Copyright Act is. A DMCA criminalizes production and dissemination of technology, devices, or services intended to circumvent measures that control access to copyrighted works. So basically, what it's meant to do is, let's say I have a subscription-based service that offers private videos, right? And let's say somebody goes over there, takes my videos by subscribing, and then publishes them on their own YouTube. A DMCA is supposed to protect me, the creator, by taking down those videos. The problem is when Qidian is claiming that the translations done by WuxiaWorld translators are their copyrighted material, WuxiaWorld doesn't have a control over how Patreon handles the situation. So that's why nobody knew it was going to happen, because it was an attack to shut down all the WuxiaWorld Patreons, because if nobody can have a Patreon, then suddenly Qidian becomes a lot more viable for translators to go to make money. But at the same time, they resumed copying all the translated works from WuxiaWorld onto their own site to claim ownership, which is why you can read a Will Eternal, Renegade Immortal, and other WuxiaWorld translations on Qidian. It's all stolen from WuxiaWorld, which, like, again, like, I hate to, like, choose sides, but come on, this is just straight up really, really messed up stuff. So this is also why I assume Ren Washing over at WuxiaWorld is creating their own in-house sponsorship system, which, as launched, I'm a sponsor for Martial World there, and I'm a sponsor for Deathblade's A Will Eternal there. Like, that's where I'm doing my things. I moved off Patreon because what the issue is with Patreon is they can decide whichever way. And unfortunately, if Patreon decides that Qidian has the rights to the works, even though they don't, it sets a precedent. It sets a legal precedent that now they can vie for, you know, everything on every other platform. So it's like Patreon could have taken down all the WuxiaWorld translators' Patreons. They would have lost all of their monthly income. And with the DMCA, it actually could have given the patrons monthly subscriber income. It might have given it to Qidian, because this is all like weird. Like YouTube used to do that. If somebody filed a claim, it would give all of your monetization to whoever filed the claim until the claim was disrupted. But with minutia and with everything being pushed back and back and back, you never know how long that's going to happen. That would have seriously damaged a lot of these translators' livelihoods. So that's not cool. So like, you know, it's a really, really tough place to be right now, because if everyone just like worked within the confines of the law or worked amicably and not in bad faith, it'd be all good. But the problem is because all of this is between overseasness. Like, you have an audience in America, you have people in China working, you have all these different systems in play. It gets a lot more muddied. Now, here's another interesting story that just came out recently, which only highlights how messed up everything is. So, Crazy Translator on Qidian is actually the same person as WuxiaWorld translator of Talisman Emperor Invader. They're the same person. He was doing both at the same time. That's absolutely crazy that to just continue to keep his fans on Qidian, when he started Talisman Emperor, he had to have a pseudonym. He had to do it under a completely different name because he would have lost it all. But unfortunately, he's decided that he has to drop War Sovereign Soaring the Heavens. So he's no longer going to be translating that because it's difficult to take the amount of time needed for the low income they pay over there to not have a Patreon in addition to it. So he had to drop War Sovereign Soaring the Heavens, and he's moving on to just do Talisman Emperor, which you can check out on WuxiaWorld, obviously. And yeah, it's like these chapters take a long time to translate, and it is a skill that develops over time. You wouldn't charge the same amount for something you learned 6 years ago, 6 years later when you're 6 years better at it. It's just the income ratio doesn't work. But you can check out his whole announcement about being the same person, about why he's stepping back, and his apology to the fans, and all the reasons behind it. You can check that in the description. There's a link below you can click on. But yeah, that's my interpretation of the situation. Again, it may not be 100% correct, as I'm not really affiliated with either. I'm not on the inside. I'm not in the room where it happens, to quote Hamilton. But from all the public announcements, the interruptions in the translations, all the terrible word of mouth surrounding Qidian, I'm pretty confident to say it's at least 80% accurate, which is really sad, because it sucks that something that we love so much, and the people behind putting that out and translating it for us, are getting so taken advantage of in these situations. You know, it's a real big bummer. So I'd like to know your thoughts. Write it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your, I don't know, like, just let me know your thoughts on it. Like, if you have some insider information that's a little bit different, like, let me know. But guys, like, it's shaped up pretty bad. We do have a comment in the chat from Karaka Susastra. Laura says, Qidian won because they have an app on Android Apple, and people can read the novel offline. They can read WuxiaWorld novel offline with their app. Yeah. So it's tough when a precedent's set around things that shouldn't really matter. Like, having an app shouldn't have anything to do with whether or not translators on WuxiaWorld have the rights to their translations. So yeah, that was our main topic today. That's kind of like, It's kind of messed up. I'm going to try to get Invader on the show soon. I think he'd be a great person to talk to about all this, especially because he's been on both sides of it. He might understand it a little bit better. But again, check out the link in the description to get more on that.